Okay, we're live, so let's go. It's Aiden Pierce. Thanks for stopping by. We are going to walk through some altcoins today, so let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to talk about Polkadot. And Polkadot has been interesting because it had this very long sideways consolidation at the end of 2020 into a massive move higher. You had this broadening wedge. A lot of the alts, especially the DeFi alts, look similar. You have a broadening wedge up here into the large breakdown, which we saw across the crypto market in its entirety. Since then, it's been playing level to level. It's actually one of the more clean charts that I've seen in crypto today. You can see that these are all weekly order blocks. Pull up the weekly chart. Right here, these were periods of significant consolidation, at least on this chart, what you could call significant consolidation. And VPVR over here kind of confirms these volume nodes. For example, this one right here. I also have Ichimoku pulled up, and you can see that the trend right now is clearly bearish. You had this TK, Tenkin, Kijun imbalance that, there was potentially a pretty significant mean reversion move to be had here. However, DOT has continued to move lower. So where are we going? Well, that's a great question that no one knows the answer to, but we can look at the chart and try to figure out what are the possibilities. So if I'm looking at this chart, the first thing I notice is we have a significant breakdown here, and then we have a counter trend move full of three wave moves. So this is correcting the big move down, three waves. This to me looks like three waves. This looks like an intermediate consolidation. And then here we have a move down and then a slight move up. And that's what we have thus far. So you're like, okay, well, that's obvious. The thing is, these patterns tend to move in symmetry. So if we call this three wave down a W, and then we call this intermediate consolidation an X, we could put our Y here and say, okay, this is concluded, this three wave move down right here. And so we should get something akin to this move up here, right here, right? However, that's not the only option in my view. I think it's possible that we actually haven't finished Y. The reason I say that is because we've only had this one move down. We didn't really have a three-wave move. So I think it's possible that we get a move down into early August to test this volume node / weekly order block / period or area of consolidation. And then from there, we get this type of move up to counter trend the down move. And that would look something like maybe 786 to retest this volume node right here, just north of $17. So whether we're already concluded with this down move and we're moving up to retest, resistance, support term resistance right here, or we have one more move down, I think either way, there's probably further downside to be had. So the way that I'm thinking about this, and we have to, see how the market actually plays out, but and see, what's actually happening here, what's the actual structure. But the way that I'm seeing it is, if we have the Y, and then we move up to test this block right here, I still think that we have another significant down move. And the reason I believe this is because we haven't seen any significant move down in legacy markets like the S&P 500 in a pretty significant period. And those markets are due for a significant down move. I think the other day, the S&P moved down pretty strongly and has since retraced that and is back close to all-time highs, if not at all-time highs. And so if we're expecting a larger pullback in legacy markets, then I would expect to see similar moves in crypto. I do not think that crypto will be spared in that instance. And so if that's the case, then I think it's very possible that we get these significant down moves. And you can see that a one-to-one move would actually take you down into the significant volume, the most significant volume node on the chart, if you zoom out, which happens to be right around here. So that's kind of how I'm seeing the altcoin charts at a high level. Just stepping back, looking at the Ichimoku, like we had a TK cross. We're below the cloud. The lagging spans below price. There's nothing here to tell you that the trend is reversed. We're moving higher. Buy. There's significant resistances overhead. DOT first has to contend with the Tenkin. Then it has to contend with this huge volume node and weekly order block and support turn resistance. You have the cloud coming down. You also have the Kijun coming down. So yes, it depends what time frame you're looking at. We could be bullish in the smaller time frames. The larger time frames very much still bearish. So it's important to not lose sight of that. And then if we bottomed here and we're moving up to retest this resistance right here, that's still a good move. Something like north of 25%. If we haven't finished this Y wave and we're still doing a 3-wave down, and let's just say that we do get down to this volume node around 9:30 or something. It's not what I wanted. You do get down to this volume node, then you can see that the move up that we could potentially have is absolutely significant, especially if you got up to up here to this volume node. You'd be looking at an 80% move. But in any case, it's a significant move. And then obviously, if we get something akin to what we saw back here in May, when Bitcoin had a significant drop, I do believe that Bitcoin would need to break the 30,000, the 32 to 30,000 level for us to see something like this. But if that does happen, then I think it's very possible that we head down to the larger volume down here. So that's kind of how I'm seeing most altcoin charts at a super high level. So going through some of these, like Uni, for example. So this is DeFi alt. I have some of these lines drawn on the chart for a reason that we can go through. But basically, the way that, I was seeing this at the top was, this kind of looks a little bit like a parallel channel. And anytime you have a rising parallel channel, I think the chances are probably greater that we're going to break down than we're going to break up. Obviously, sometimes it can break up. But whereas you had a broadening wedge on DOT, we had a rising channel here. Of course, we saw the breakdown on Uni. And Uni has held up stronger than some other alts. If you pull up Litecoin, for example, you can see that clearly the trend is down. But on Uni, it seems to be holding up a little bit better, like some of the stronger alts in the market, like Ethereum. So we have a bounce here, bounce here, bounce here. Now, what a lot of people are saying, this is, Bitcoin back in 2018 or whenever, when it broke the 6K support, and this is the bounces are getting weaker, and, you have a lower high, potentially a lower high. We can't say yet whether it's going to be a lower high or not, and then we're going to get this huge breakdown. So I don't think that that's necessarily how it's going to play out. I think that's kind of obvious at this point. But if you look at what I was saying with DOT, where we have this move up, how are you going to decode this price action? And the way I see it is we have a 3-wave move here. So once again, I would call this W. I'd call this counter trend X. And then I'd call this Y. And the question is Y done here? And I'd argue that Y should be 3 waves and that Y is not done. Maybe Y is coming down to $10. If you take a measured move of W from the high of X, 1-to-1 puts us right at this 1086 area. Could be could have stopped at the 618. And so, or the 6.065, somewhere in this golden pocket, what we call golden pocket for the Fibonacci ratios. It's possible that we bottomed here and that we're moving back up and mirroring something over here. However, to fully get our three-wave move, I think a move down would make more sense just from a symmetry perspective. Doesn't have to happen, but I think it's a possibility that people need to be made aware of, because the market generally is pretty bullish. At least my Twitter feed appears to be bullish as of late. So something to keep in mind. If we did come down here, then I would be looking at a move that resembles something of this volatility. And so the 786 kind of puts us in this like 2086 area. The 1-to-1 move puts us around $25. So that's what these two lines are up here. It's interesting that you also have the Tenkin, you have the Kijun, which obviously would move down, but then the cloud here. So if this were to bounce back up, this were to come down and finish Y early August and then bounce back up, these areas kind of match with where a cloud resistance would be coming in at. And so this area, I think, is an area to keep an eye on if structure were to play out like this. And then similar to DOT, my expectation would be that we would then have a larger move down that would accompany legacy markets and their long overdue pullback, for example, in the S&P 500, that I think is coming. And so if we were to get a move like this, if it's from this area, the 786 at 786 to 602, so kind of that 8 to 6 area, and then here it'd be 786 would be 930 to 712. So call it the $9 to $6 area, as I think would wrap up this structure and present a really good buying opportunity to then take it higher. So really, once we finish this structure, my view on the market is that we are still in a macro bull market, even though we're short-term bear, given that we've already fallen more than 20%. So based on those views, I think that, we do have significant upside through the fall and potentially into early next year. And that is going to be a move that you definitely want to take advantage of. The question is, where do these assets bottom out in the short to intermediate term? Where do you start cost averaging in? You could argue that you already could be doing that. And so, it just really depends on how you're viewing the market and what opportunities you're seeing. But when I look at structure here, what I'm really looking for is probably more downside. And what gives me the most confidence about that is legacy markets. So what else can we look at here? Let's pull up Ethereum. So Ethereum is pretty similar to Uni. You can see that we're making these lower high. Is this a lower high? Who knows? Let's wait and see. And then you also have a floor here, right? So are we gonna just break through this and significantly fall, or are we going to potentially head to the upside? And once again, this is how you view the market. Is this a WX and maybe we haven't finished the Y? Is this done right here? Was this the Y? Is this done? We're now mirroring this move up to somewhere, maybe the Kijun, maybe the cloud, before we potentially get that larger move down. And so once again, very similar. Just a reminder, Ichimoku here is telling you we had a TK cross bearish. We have Kumo that and a cloud here that's telling you bearish, prices below the cloud, the lagging spans in price. So once again, pretty messy. But if we were to get a move down, another move down to complete the Y wave, a 1-to-1 move, I'd be looking right around this $1,400 area. And if we pull up the weekly chart, you can see that this is a pretty significant area here at the $1,400 mark. It just also so happens to be the one-to-one move of the W wave if this were the Y wave. So just an interesting area to keep an eye on. Maybe there's something there, maybe there's not. And then, a move up from here would look something like, 2,400 to 2,900. And if we were to get this move down, that would look something like into this red zone around 2134, maybe 2,400. Once again, if we got to move up here into mid-August, the cloud's giving you resistance right around 2,400, right around the highs here of the potential X wave. So that's kind of how I am thinking about ETH. Comp, this is one of the assets in the market that just kind of looks different than all the other assets. It bled down substantially. So this fell 78% in 41 days. So really, really large move down. And so this is kind of the fall with the rest of the market here. And then this kind of looks to me like a expanding flat. So you almost touched the 1618 here, right? For the if you had a move up here, a move down, and then a move up here taking the high of the original move. If we look at this move up, you can see that almost tapped the 1272. So with the 1618 move, the 1272 move kind of looks and smells a little bit like a flat. I'd like to see those reversed, but it's definitely possible. So where would this go in the short term? Well, you can see here significant volume, and price is now below that. So it's definitely contesting with that. Right now you can see that it's testing the Tenkin, and it's got short-term rejected. It's also have the cloud right above it, and this is on the daily. So I'm not really sure. It seems like the upside here is it's got significant resistance short-term on where it could potentially go from an upside perspective. If we take this measured move right here and take it to the top right here, which you could argue is the end of an expanding flat, a one-to-one move would take you to 155. Just happens to be the largest volume node on the chart right now. So I think that's just something to keep in mind. And so, we'll see how this plays out. This is one of the only charts that I've seen where it actually has a bullish TK cross, the Tenkin cross the Kijun here on the daily chart. So there has been obviously significant short-term momentum upwards after this drop of 78% in a short period of time. So I think that that's definitely positive for comp. This is an asset to keep your eye on based on how strong it's been performing, but overall continues to be bearish and potentially headed down for this larger volume and consolidation area down here. So that's kind of how I'm viewing comp. Switching over to Doge, it's actually a different chart I want to pull up. On Binance US. So the reason I like this chart on Binance is it's very clean, right? So you have price that's basically stopped at the exact lows each time. And originally what I was looking for here is shoulder, head, and then was looking for another shoulder here. So kind of like a move to come up and test this cloud. So the issue with that is we topped out here and we went sideways and were rejected by this resistance once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, a 5th time, and then the 6th time we finally broke out. This was 73 days that we were under this resistance. tapping it, getting rejected, tapping it, getting it rejected again. And so I would have expected a pretty significant explosion to break out above this. Now it's possible that we broke out, went sideways. We're retesting this support, this what had been significant resistance as support, and then we're going to go up, make this other shoulder, get rejected by the cloud, and then potentially come down. Now, the issue right now is it's getting rejected by the Tenkan, and this just wasn't the kind of move that I was looking for from Doge. I was expecting to see price that was compressed and was significantly weighed down by this resistance. Once we broke out of it, I was expecting to see a more significant move. And it really is just consolidating this move. It's possible that this is still coming, but as it stands right now, I'm really watching this downtrend line. If we break down below this downtrend line, I'm gonna be worried. But until we officially break below this 16 cents area on a daily basis, I'm not super concerned, and I think upside's still possible. Now, if you look at the volume, the VPVR here, it's very clear where the volume on the chart sits and where this could potentially go over the intermediate term. You look at the weekly chart here. This is the zone right here. And if this were to break down, and you look at the neckline here, you're looking at sort of the 6 cent to 3.5 cent area as support. You have significant volume here, but that is a very large drop from where we are at right now. So that would be, that's not what I wanted. That would be just to this volume node right here, another 68% drop for Doge. So I think you need to be very careful with Doge. Once again, the Ichimoku is screaming at you, telling you that we are in high time frame bearish conditions. Could this reverse? Sure, it could reverse. But right now, with where the lagging span is, we have a bearish TK cross. There is a disequilibrium here. There is a potential move up to make money in the short term. Even if that does happen and we don't just roll over here and break down, I think down here is still a significant possibility and something to keep an eye on. So I think the 6 to 5 cent area is a very real risk at this point, and needs to be part of a potential strategy plan if we are to break this neckline. So something to keep your eye on. Looking at Litecoin, we touched on this, for a second earlier, but this just does not look good. I mean, it's bouncing, it's making lower lows. Some of these other charts have really held the line in the sand from the first drop, but Litecoin just continues to fall and fall and fall. At lows, it fell 75%, and as of right now, we are looking at a increase of 14% off the lows. So that's not what you want to see after a 75% fall, is this little bounce right here. You want to see something a little more powerful than that to show that there's real buyers in the Litecoin market. Similarly, this was a decent move here, and so if we ended this consolidation down here, I'd want to see at least like the 150s, probably at least a test of the Kijun to say that, okay, like we put in a short-term bottom here and we're headed higher. Otherwise, I think there's a real risk here that this could just roll over and create one more low, WXY. And as long as that risk is on the table, definitely something to keep an eye on. Maybe you want to have your stop losses ready, or just be monitoring the market to see what's going on. As of right now, we're just consolidating. This could just be a flag, and then we head higher to test the Kijun, some of these higher, volume node areas, and the cloud, something akin to a move like this, before potentially getting a larger move down with legacy markets. But we're kind of in this no man's zone right now, and this bounce based on what's transpired over the last several weeks to months, just it's uninspiring at this point. So definitely something to keep an eye on. Going to Matic. So Matic's extremely interesting, mostly because how volatile Matic has been. And I already did a video on what I think, Matic's doing, what I think the structure is. I do think Matic's in an impulsive move. And you can just see here, like after Matic broke down like the rest of the market, it's pretty amazing what it was able to do. So from the lows here, Matic moved up 234%. That is an absolutely wild move after that fall. And I think that shows the strength of the market and the demand for Matic. And then it's basically been moving down in this channel ever since. And you can see that we're getting rejected right now by both the Tenkin and the top of the channel, and that's serving as significant resistance. So I think Matic's going to be telling on what's going to happen over the short term. Like, we're either going to break out above this channel and break above the Tenkin, and then you can see that there's like some white space right here that Matic can take advantage of and potentially move higher with. If the Tenkin and the top of the channel provide significant resistance and Matic for some reason is unable to break out here, then you run the risk of moving towards the bottom of the channel, or at least the midline of the channel. If that were to take place, then you'd be looking at taking the top of here to the low here. From the top of this move, you'd be looking at potentially anywhere between 55 to 44 cents as a buy area for the move down. Once again, it's possible that we have a 3-wave move down, and then we have a B, C, D, E triangle X wave. We have a move down, a move up, and then do we need that third move down to complete the Y wave? That's up in the air at this point. It's very possible that the low was put in. This is headed higher. This is a massive disequilibrium between the Kijun and the Tenkin. A lot of open space here. So I think it's a really interesting point where we're at in the market. Are we going to get rejected here, or are we going to squeeze higher? And I think that's going to provide the key for what happens next in the markets. But then obviously we do have this massive move down that happened in basically 4 or 5 days, where we had a 75% move down. And if legacy markets do move down over the next several weeks to months, we could see something similar on Matic. So even if we do move higher here, I think caution's warranted. Even if we do end up making a higher low, if this could end up looking something like a broader inverse head and shoulders, and then we just head higher. So there's a lot of possibilities here on what could happen, but I want to make sure that all of you are at least aware and familiar with where we're at in the market now and what is the real downside risks in the short term. So that's how I am looking at Matic. Once again, you have this TK disequilibrium. I think the upside potential is still pretty strong even after a significant move. This is just a very, very much, if this is able to break, then I think there's upside to be had. If this doesn't break, I'd kind of just sit on my hands until the market decides where it wants to go and what it wants to do. Let's look at Link. So pulling up the Link chart, the daily Link chart here, I think it's obvious where the volume is on this chart as I continue to zoom out and make sure I'm covering this time frame fully. So this is where the massive volume node is on VPVR right around $12.50. And it's just like DOT that we talked about earlier, where DOT front ran this weekly order block level, just barely, but it did front run it. And so it makes me a little skeptical that we could potentially have another move down. Similarly, Link, it did come into this larger area of price consolidation here, but similarly, it front ran this volume node at 1250 just slightly. And so that also makes me believe that we could potentially have one more move down into early August. Does not need to happen. Very possible that we bottomed here and that we're heading up. This is a pretty significant TK disequilibrium. The cloud is significantly higher. There's absolutely upside to be had in a mean reversion move. However, when I look at this chart, it seems like this is going to be a magnet for price sooner or later. And so I'd almost rather come down and hit it now and then get a much larger move like we've seen here. If we did come down to test this larger volume node at around 1250, anywhere between the 618 and the 1 would be fair game. I think what's more likely is this 618 to 786 area, kind of the 2150 to 2484 type area. The Kijun's right here, the cloud's right here. So you'd be looking at something close to a 100% move. If this were to roll over and that were to play out, once again, keep in mind that this move that we had here is still very real and could happen sometime in later August or September should legacy markets finally roll over. So that is at large how I'm looking at altcoins across the market. You can see that it's very similar. Some altcoins are performing stronger than others. Example would be Uni or ETH. Some of them are performing weaker. An example would be Litecoin. You have comp that looks something more akin to an expanded flat structure that looks a little different than a lot of the more WXY type lower consolidations that a lot of these coins have been putting in. So would be interested to hear how you're thinking about the market, where you think it's going short term. If you have any ideas, feel free to drop them in the comments. Happy to go over anything that you'd like to talk about. And thank you again for stopping by. Aiden Pierce is signing off. See ya.